welcome back to my channel. This is the third attempt to film this video. I get so nervous. Just funny because I never used to. Anyway, I had a cracking reading month. I've sorted my books into piles so I can let you know which books I enjoyed the most and which were fun but I didn't love. So we're going to start with the books that I thought were a lot of fun and they had some really good parts but I didn't love them. So we're going to start with, don't at me, Coraline by Neil Gaiman. This was, it's a children's book. I'm aware that it's a children's book and I did love Coraline and I love the story. But I think as an adult, I wanted just a little bit more. However, that said, it was just what I needed. I needed a break from everything else I was reading. So for that, it was absolutely perfect. Coraline follows a young girl who has, I believe, she's just moved into a new house. It's a flat. And she discovers a door to nowhere, but then that door does indeed lead to somewhere. I'm not going to say any more in case you haven't read it or seen the film, but it was a lot of fun. It was a really good little adventure, but it just it's probably one that I won't keep hold of. I'll probably donate back to the charity shop. So the next book that I read was Call the Midwife by Jennifer Worth. I don't know why I looked that up. I've seen the whole TV series that we've got so far. I know it's Jenny Worth. This was equal parts interesting, equal parts fun, and equal parts, well, I don't know if you can have three equal parts, but you know what I mean. Jennifer Worth has chronicled her life of working in the East End from the 1950s, and it's really interesting. She talks about the poverty, and we even have some history on midwifery and how it was really quite late on before people were like, oh, actually, maybe we should look into how we can have mothers and babies being born safely. That just sounds typical. So that bit was really interesting. It was interesting to see the characters that had been used in here and then how they've been portrayed for the TV series, which I quite enjoyed. But there was something in her narrative style that I didn't like. Some of the wording she used I didn't like, but yeah, I did enjoy it overall. I read it quite quickly, but I will probably just be donating this back to the charity shop. I don't think I'll reread it. The next book I read that was so-so was the Bermonzey Bookshop. This follows Kate, who lives with her nasty aunt and nasty cousins and her predatory male cousin, which I just thought was disgusting, to be honest. And at 17 she's kicked out and she has to go at it alone. And she goes at it alone. She gets a job in a factory, she gets a job in a bookshop, and a whole new world's opened up to her. It's not as opened as I would have liked. I really wanted a bit more of that world, but that was just my preference really, because it's got bookshop in the title. I just wanted it to be a bit more about the bookshop. But I get it was just a base for the character, and apparently I read a couple of reviews and a lot of people that are from Bermondsey or know the area well said that the author got it just right, Mary Gibson, and they loved it, and it was a fun book. We go into Kate's past, someone from her past comes back, but everything's not as hunky-dory as she thought, and we have some love interests going on. It was a really nice world to be in. I really enjoyed reading of the world and the poverty. That seems to be a thing for me lately. Overall, I had a fun time. I just don't think I'll be keeping it. And the next book that I read that literally moved at breakneck speed was The Silence of Bones by June Hur. I've had this for a while. I think I saw Reagan at Peru's Project talk about this, and that was why I wanted it. And we are in Joseon, I'm really sorry, Korea, in the 1800s. Now, is it the that one. And we follow Seol, who is an indentured servant to the police force, and she is indentured, so she is unable to leave. She is theirs, and her job is to deal with female victims. Men can't touch the bodies, and there's a string of murders, and she's paired up with an inspector. And even though she knows that she should be quiet and obedient, she can't help but being curious. And she goes off to try and solve these murders. It was definitely interesting. June has done such a remarkable job with creating the time period, and it was really eye-opening for me because of what we see, the persecution of certain religious types, and yeah, it was a really good mystery. Yes, very, very enjoyable mystery, but I don't think I'll reread this, so I'll probably donate this at some point. I'm not going to rush because I did buy this brand new, and I'm always a bit hesitant to donate my brand new books that I bought back to the charity shop, but I know that the author has released a new book and I would definitely be interested in picking it up. The atmosphere and the environment that's described in this book is just beautiful, and she's a very, very talented writer. I just wanted a bit more. But I don't think I'm a huge mystery fan, in all fairness, so that's no disrespect to June. So they were the books that I enjoyed. I'm happy that I read, but I don't really have any lasting feelings for them. And the next books I loved, absolutely loved. So we'll start with the biggest. I started reading this in August and finished in September because it's over 700 pages, and it's not your typical story. So this was the Ragged Trousered Philanthropists. We follow a group of working men. They work for a company called Rushton & Co. Rushton & Co. are shady. They're always trying to undercut their workers, but at the same time they're constantly undercut by other companies. It's a horrible vicious cycle in this book. The men are often laid off at work. There's no work, and they're just left to get on with it. There's charities that pop up to try and help them, but these charities are run by the rich and they don't actually help at all. If anything, they make everyone feel a bit shittier. We follow these men and their home lives, and we touch on the men using their money for drink. The author, Robert Tressel, who is Robert Noonan, he, for me at least, it feels very like a manifesto, workers' rights, socialism. Owen, who is one of our main characters, if not the main characters, he is our voice of the working people, and he's desperately trying to educate his colleagues on what the meaning of poverty, not the meaning of poverty, but the cause of poverty, and he's desperately trying to convince them that it's money, and they just won't have it. I loved this book so much. It's dense, it bangs on a lot, which is fine by me. There's a few bits where it repeats, which I wasn't a huge fan of, where it repeated a few things, but Owen is trying to get it through to other people, so you're kind of hoping for like this uprising. But yeah, it focuses mostly on white men. There's a few women, but really their stories are told through the men, which is a shame really, and just your usual women's stories, relating to babies, which is not ideal, but overall I loved more of it than I didn't love it, so I'm keeping this and I hope one day to reread it, but that is a mission. So the next book, which is the last one I read actually, and we'll start here, it was just a short story, and so these are the best short stories by Guy de Maupassant, practicing my French, and the story I read was Boule d'Issuf. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. So we are following a group of travellers who are trying to leave their town. It's been defeated by the army, so they want to leave, and they all get in this carriage and they go on their journey. But on their journey, you get to see their classism, how nasty they are, how selfish they are. For a short story, it really packed a punch. I didn't rate the story that much, purely because I didn't like it. Like, not the story's good, but because of like the people, I was like, no, I don't like this at all. So that's just me all over, to be honest. But it was really well written, it's beautiful. But this story focuses on one woman who has to make an ultimate sacrifice, and she's shunned for it. It's still making me angry. So I'm very excited to read some more of this author's work. I picked this book up on a whim, actually, which is A Parisian Affair. There's only, I think, about 3 or 4 stories that cross over, which is fine. I mean, this cost me 25p, so it's fine. And I picked this up on a whim, and then I saw that and I was like, oh, go on. Not realising that some of the stories were the same, but it's not a huge thing, so we'll just pop that there for now. And then moving on, where should we go? I read A Woman in Berlin by Anonymous. Good Lord. So this book follows our main character, who remains anonymous, but she is known to have been a journalist, and she chronicles her life and her neighbours' lives in the 2-month period where Russia invaded Germany, which then, for me at least anyway, led open to lots of researching, because my history isn't that great of this time period and what happened, and luckily my husband's quite smart, so he managed to fill in some blanks for me, which was great. But so it's devastating. It's very what's the word I'm looking for? It's very delicately told. I think she's a very reserved woman who wrote this, but you know, the silence that's described, and the lack of food and water, and the horror that comes with war. And I don't think it's a spoiler, and I think you should know this going in. I think I was a few pages in when it dawned on me that there's mostly women left in these broken towns as this army of men come through. It's disgusting. And yeah, you can just feel it coming. But the author, she survives. Actually, a lot of the women do, and they're very open with each other about how they survived, and how many times they were hurt. And the men that slowly return, or the men that still are there, don't want to hear about it. They're kind of disgusted by it. They're like, but these women are talking about it. This is the way they survived, by telling each other their stories. Our main character tries her best to align herself with a higher ranking official, so that she becomes untouchable to others. But yeah, and how life tries to get back to normal, how she tries to get back to normal, and gosh, it was difficult to read, but interesting at the same time. It was definitely interesting, so I'd recommend that, but be warned, it is heavy. And then the next 2 books I also loved. I mean, it was a cracking month, that's all I can say. So we're going to go with my first James Baldwin, which was If Beale Street Could Talk. I really wanted to read Giovanni's Room first, but that's fine. This one came into my life. And this one takes place in Harlem, the black soul of New York City in the era of Aretha Franklin and Ray Charles. The narrator of this novel is Tish. She's 19 and pregnant, and her lover Fonny, the father of a child, is in jail accused of rape. The story follows, obviously, that couple, and flashbacks, and her life and their life, and how the system is definitely stacked against them. It is plainly laid out in here, in this book, and I just want to make sure I'm not spoiling anything. No, I don't think it's a spoiler. And how her other half has been locked up for this crime, but when the characters lay out all of the evidence as to why he's been locked up, it just doesn't stack up. It's bullshit, and that's the way it is. That is exactly what is going on here. It's just bullshit. But James Baldwin's writing is amazing. And I'm very excited to read more about it. The thing that I will say, and I will put myself out there, is it was interesting as we were getting to the end, and I'm like, there's not enough pages. You know, it's like, you know, how are we going to where's my happy ending? There's the best ending you can hope for. And I think that says a lot about the literature we read and the stories we hear, expecting that kind of ending. And this is the kind of ending that is more based in real life. So it was eye-opening, sad, beautiful. I loved the families in this. So good. It was so good. I didn't give this a full 5 stars, purely because even though James Baldwin is an amazing writer, I'm not a huge fan of men writing women losing their virginity. Even if he did a top-notch job, it riles me, I'm afraid, so I couldn't go all the way for that. But I'm very excited to read Giovanni's Room. And the next book that I read, and we're winding down, is Carol by Patricia Highsmith. I've been after this for so long. I couldn't buy it. I couldn't afford to buy it brand new at the time, so I did luckily find it in a charity shop. And this was great. We started off, me and Patricia, should I say, we started off to a rocky start. I wasn't sure. I mean, the writing was amazing, the world amazing, but I was like, I'm not sure. But the more I read and the further along it got, especially right up to the end, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So we follow what was on Teresa. Teresa becomes infatuated with a woman called Carol, and they begin a love affair. But they're not allowed. They're 2 women. And yeah, Teresa's so young to Carol's very worldly, but Teresa's such a free spirit at the same time, and it's so touching and heartbreaking and frustrating. But it's so good. It is so good, and I would recommend anyone to read it, even if you just read it for Patricia's writing. You can probably end the video here now if you want, because I am about to read you probably my favourite passage I've ever read in a book that really sums up something. So, January. It was all things, and it was one thing, like a solid door. Its cold sealed the city in a grey capsule. I can't read out loud. January was moments, and January was a year. January rained the moments down and froze them in her memory. The woman she saw peering anxiously by the light of a match at the names in a dark doorway. The man who scribbled a message and handed it to a friend before they parted on the sidewalk. The man who ran a block for a bus and caught it. Every human action seemed to yield a magic. January was a 2-faced month. Jangling like jester bells, crackling like snow crust, pure as any beginning, grim as an old man, mysteriously familiar, yet unknown, like a word one can almost, but not quite define. Seriously? So, oh my God, Carol absolutely touched my heart. I loved it. Which is interesting because I've been obsessed with getting Carol and the talented Mr. Ripley. Luckily Carol came first, so. And that's it. I hope you haven't mind the waffling. I'm just going to stick it up on the internet and see what happens, but let me know what your favourite book of September was. I can see better now. I'm trying to hide the glare. And I will be back soon, hopefully, with a very small haul. See you soon.